have this vivid memory of sitting in the bathtub one time and just crying.
I think I punched my dad once.
You're not in charge of me right now. Like, you just won't leave me alone.
I had an epidural in my back, so I couldn't move very well.
She just wanted me to keep pushing and keep going.
Everybody had one. Like, if you didn't have one, you were looked down upon.
This is a show where teenagers share their experiences growing up in today's world. I'm your host, Dr. RJ, and this is A Teen's Perspective. Hello and welcome to A Teen's Perspective. I'm your host, Dr. RJ, and today I want to do something different for you. In my Facebook group, A Teen's Perspective, there's many parents that I engage with, and we chat about some of the issues they're seeing in their teenager. If you're interested in joining this Facebook group, make sure you go to Facebook and search A Teen's Perspective. So my plan for you is to share with you some of the questions parents are asking, and I want to use this opportunity to answer that. So let's start off with the first question. What are some ways I can help my teen gain more self-confidence? Also, what does my teen son really need from me the most? All right, this is a great question. So the first part of the question was, how do you as a parent help your teenager gain self-confidence? We all know that confidence is at the core of a lot of issues as it relates to kids. If your child suffers from low self-esteem, if your child has depression, anxiety, if your child is underachieving in sports or academics, if your child doesn't have really meaningful relationships with their friends, you can look at the source as confidence. So building one's confidence is extremely important, especially for teenagers in today's world. So how does a parent help? Well, one thing you must know as a parent is that giving your child compliments is great and is something you should do, but is not going to be as impactful as if their peers are giving them compliments. So there are a number of things that I do as a life coach to help teenagers gain confidence, but I do want to answer the question is, how can a parent help your child gain confidence? And this is my recommendation. Instead of giving your child compliments, try to help them identify their own compliment. So what I mean by that is this. Let's say, for instance, your child did a great job on their math test. So sure, you can say, great job, you're smart, you're amazing, right? You can say those things, but a better question to help them gain their own confidence is, what about you do you feel helped you do so well on the math test? That question will force them to start to look inside and see what are some of their strengths, which will help their confidence. All right, so the second question is, what does my teen son really need from me the most? Well, I would say whether it's a son or a daughter, teenagers need love and support from their parents. But something that's even more important for teenagers is to be understood. So the better you can understand your child, the better your relationship will be. And that's what they really need from you. And I believe you will, because you're following A Teen's Perspective podcast so that you can better understand teenagers. All right, next question. My teen never believes a word I say. It's so frustrating. She will moan and groan about how long something will take, how hard it is. When I give her suggestions as how to fix it, all she does is yell and said it will never work. She just likes to complain. Ugh. Also, she has summer reading to do and has not started it. I ask her what her plans are, and I do not nag, but I know a week before school, she'll be in tears because she's far behind. How do I get her to hear me as an experienced adult who has value to add to the conversation? This is a wonderful question because I'm certain many parents experience this. Your teenagers feel that you just do not understand. And in some cases, they're right. Because believe it or not, teenagers are navigating a world that parents have never experienced. You know, with social media and all this technology, parents have never experienced that as a teenager. So on one hand, they're right. But it doesn't mean that they should discredit you. So I want to share with you a way to really get through to your teenager. First, I want to say is the emotional state is very important. So if your teenager is extremely upset and they can't figure something out, that means that your information will not be received well. Because when someone is upset, it's very difficult for them to receive information because they're upset. Your emotions plays a huge part of how you interpret information. So the best thing to do as a parent is just to be there for them during that time. You want to validate their feelings and say, you're absolutely right. I understand why you're upset. It makes sense, and you want to normalize their feelings. So you can say something like, hey, anyone in your shoes would be upset, and I am sorry that you had that experience. So at this point, you're just showing your love and support. You're letting them know that they're being heard with the hope that eventually they start to calm down. Now, after they've calmed down and after they're in a better mood, then you want to have the conversation. And you do not want to have that conversation by telling them what they should do. You always want to ask questions. You can give suggestions, but you want to ask questions. You want to ask to understand. And you want to phrase your suggestions as questions. So in other words, you can say, hey, what about this? Or have you tried this? Or I read somewhere that this may help. And that way it's not necessarily coming from you and they won't automatically shoot it down. So I hope that one helps. The next question. My teen, 14 years old, is in a split family, and her mom and I do not currently get along. I recently found evidence that her mom talks badly about me and shares biased views of our adult disagreements, including finances. My teen and her mom spends most of their year together and are like best friends. And as a result, my teen has internalized some of this bias. What does my teen need from me to help support a healing relationship? What can I subtly do to help my teen learn to think of herself? All right, it's a great question. So anytime there is a split family and the two parents do not get along, it creates tension. And teenagers and kids are very, very aware of what's going on. They pick up on things. So it's very difficult to hide disagreements. It's very difficult to hide hatred because they see it. They're paying attention even when it looks like they're not. So my recommendation is to, one, be the example of what you want your teen to follow. So in other words, if the other parent is speaking negatively about you to the teen, well, make sure you don't do the same thing. You want to be the role model. You want to be the example of how your teen should behave as an adult. The second thing you want to do is to show that you respect the other parent. Now, although you may not get along with the other parent, respect goes a long way. And the fact that your teenager is very, very close to her mom, then it's extremely important that you show respect because you don't want your teenagers being forced to have to choose. And then my final recommendation is to try to have a conversation with the other parent. Now, this is very difficult, especially in split families. This can be extremely difficult, but I always challenge parents with this question. Will your life be easier? Will your life be better? Will you have less stress in your life if you spent your energy and your time trying to mend the relationship or being at odds with the other parent? And almost 100% of the time, if you choose to be at odds with the other parent, you will experience stress, you will experience frustration. But if you make attempts to mend the relationship, then there is a possibility that the relationship can improve. Hello, this is Dr. RJ. I hope you are enjoying the show. Life coaching has been proven to increase success and happiness in teenagers. So if you're interested in having a life coach for your teenager, register at www.lifescholarsacademy.com. All right, next question. My preteen, 12 years old, son is battling hormones. He is constantly trying to search up pictures and videos of the female body. I catch him in the act almost every time. When I ask him if he has questions or he wants to talk about it, he either says no or he acts like I don't know what I'm talking about. How do I help him understand and navigate as nature takes its course? So that's a great question. It's something that I believe many young boys experience. So first, I would recommend having some adult male talk to your son. I'm not sure if the dad is in the picture, but that is definitely preferred if the dad can speak to your son about this. Now, if dad is not in a picture, it's important to have some other adult male in his life, whether it's a mentor, maybe it's a pastor at his church, a life coach. This is what we do as life coaches is sometimes we have to have these conversations. If a teenager is curious about it, we prefer to help navigate them in the right direction as opposed to them doing something that they can regret later. But anytime we're coaching a teenager, and this is something I think is important for any parent to know, is that you want to focus on the bigger issue. In other words, we want to focus beyond just this one situation. And the bigger issue is the ability to manage thoughts. That's what we should focus on because hormones will not cause teenagers to do something. They're choosing to do that. Now, hormones can encourage it. Hormones can make it easier to take on a certain act, but ultimately it's a choice. So the more we can focus on managing those thoughts, controlling those thoughts, then the better teenagers will be at making the right decision. So, Mom, I think you're doing a great job by having these conversations with him. But if he's not letting you in and wanting to talk to you about these things, then my recommendation is to seek out dad, a pastor, a mentor, or a life coach. Finally, I want to talk to you a little bit about the new norm that I'm noticing among teenagers. Yes, it's COVID-19. We must social distance. A lot of times the kids are not seeing their friends. They're not in school, right? This is the summertime. But what I'm noticing is this trending habit of staying in their room all day. Have you noticed that with your teen? I constantly see it now. The teenagers want to stay in their room literally all day. They stay up all night on their phone. They sleep in to about noon. They may come out quickly to get something to eat, and then they go back in their room for the rest of the evening. So I want to make parents aware of just how dangerous that is. Whenever a teenager is in their room and whenever they're bored, the concern is damaging thoughts, these destructive thoughts that goes through their mind. Now, we all have these thoughts. We all have depressive thoughts, but when you're busy or when you're accomplishing something, when you're moving, then those thoughts usually have less of an impact. But when a teenager is stuck in their room, I want you to think of it like almost solitary confinement in a prison. Yes, your teenager probably has windows, but you're stuck in a room, a small room, which means there's not much movement, right? Most likely they're not learning something and they're on social media. These three things are literally the recipe for depression. It's literally the recipe for anxiety. Your body has to move. Anytime your body is not moving and you're not active for a long period of time, then there's no way to release certain stress hormones. There's no way to release those. So you're bottling everything up. Also, if your mind is not constantly learning something or being inspired, it goes into a downward spiral. You start to really highlight the thoughts in your mind that are destructive, that's telling you that you're not good enough, that you're not pretty enough, that you're not smart enough. And if they're allowed to stay in their room for a long time and start to look on social media that confirms the thoughts that they already have about themselves, then they can really go into this very low state where they're not motivated to do anything. And if they're not motivated to get out of their room, if they're not motivated to learn something, if they're not motivated to go out and exercise, then they will become stuck in this depressive state. They will start to be more anxious about things. So I really want to encourage parents that you have to get your kids out of their rooms. I understand we have to social distance. I understand that you have to work, right? I understand that school is not in session in a sense, so they're kind of stuck at home. But we need to find another way to get your teens engaged. So you can try a couple things. They can get a job. That's one way. Even if they're younger, they can babysit. Another way is for you to encourage some interest. Whatever interest they have, allow them to go deeper, whether it's, maybe purchasing something that is associated with their interest. So say, for instance, they're really into music. They play the guitar. Maybe pay for them to get some guitar lessons, or maybe buy them a new guitar. Or maybe you heard your teenager talk about some things they always wanted to learn. Well, this is the opportunity to allow them to learn it. And the parents, you need to encourage it. Whether it means you need to invest in buying them whatever they need to learn it, maybe get them lessons, they can get a job. Another idea is maybe the two of you learn a new hobby together: painting, knitting, planting, start a garden. There's so many ideas. And once again, you want to use the same strategy that I shared with you earlier. The best time to get your child to listen to you is when they're happy, when they're in a good mood. So this would be a perfect time. Whenever they come downstairs and you see them laughing and maybe you guys go do something fun together, then you want to bring up the idea. You want to tell them, say, hey, let's learn this together. Let's learn martial arts together. Let's learn axe throwing together. Make it creative. Make it where they would get excited about it. Don't just tell them, hey, go find something to do, because a teenage mind, they're just not motivated at this point. So you have to be the creative one. You know your child. So why don't you just get a list of all the cool things that they can learn in this time and then tell them to pick one, and you will do it with them if they want you to. Now, finally, for the parent who has a teenager who is completely refusing to do anything, they literally want to stay in their room, then that's when I recommend to negotiate. You could tell your teenager, you can continue to play video games. You can continue to be on Snapchat, but you must do this. Now, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. Well, we're going to have to limit the time that you're on Snapchat or on your game. So if you want more game playing, then you could do this. If not, it's okay. Then we'll just limit. So negotiation can work really well because it gives the teenagers the feeling that they have some control. And we all know that teenagers want independence. Teenagers want to feel like they have some control. So I hope this information was very helpful. Thank you again for being a huge supporter of this podcast. Make sure if you're new that you subscribe and share with a friend. But until next time, I'm Dr. RJ, and this is A Teen's Perspective.
Let's go.